The other big story today, Israel, the United States and other allies are on high alert this morning for possible retaliation by Iran and Hezbollah after a pair of high-profile assassinations. CBS News has learned attacks on Israel could be launched with little to no warning. Amid the escalating situation in the region, a ship in the Red Sea came under attack at least 3 times this morning. That's according to officials. It's suspected the attacks were launched by Iranian-backed Houthi rebels in Yemen. Our Ramy Inocencio is tracking the rising tensions.
Speeding faster to the Mideast to defend Israel, a U.S. aircraft carrier with its F-35 warplanes and a submarine armed with guided Tomahawk cruise missiles, joining 2 new fighter squadrons that arrived last week. U.S. officials tell CBS News that a limited attack from both Hezbollah and Iran could come with little to no warning. It's now 4 months ago today when Iran launched an estimated 300 drones and missiles, which Israel, the U.S. and its allies shot down in retaliation for what Iran says was an Israeli strike on its consulate in Syria that killed 7 people.
We are committed to helping Israel defend itself, but at the same time, we continue to work diplomatically to prevent any major escalation of this conflict.
The stakes of this conflict rose dramatically after twin high-profile assassinations of Hamas and Hezbollah leaders in the capitals of Iran and Lebanon. Israel's military last night said it is at a high state of readiness and increased patrols in the skies of Lebanon, while also tamping down fears of an imminent attack, stressing there was no change to safety advice. Meanwhile, up and down the Gaza Strip yesterday, the Hamas-run health ministry said at least 25 people were killed in Israeli military operations, after at least 90 were killed in a strike on a school-turned-shelter over the weekend in one of the worst mass killings since October 7th.
And the number of dead is now nearing 40,000, with 2 days until those hoped-for ceasefire talks with Hamas in Egypt. Israel confirmed it is attending. Hamas said it already agreed to terms in a proposal from July. And Anne-Marie, if Iran and Hezbollah attack Israel, that could all be derailed.
All right, Ramy, thank you. So for more on all of this, let's bring in Seth Jones. He's the Senior Vice President and Director of the International Security Program at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Thank you so much for joining us. So when we say the region is bracing for some sort of retaliation from Iran or perhaps Iran's proxies, what does that look like? What are the possible options, and what does Israel need to do?
Well, the reality is that Israel recently has killed both senior Hamas operative and an Iranian, not just an Iranian, but Islamic Revolutionary Guards Quds Force safe house in Iran, as well as a senior Hezbollah leader. I think we are expecting, and the Iranians and Hezbollah have indicated that they will respond to those strikes. They could come in several fashions. We could see a range of cruise missiles or ballistic missiles or drones launched from, say, Lebanon or Iran against Israel. I think it's certainly not without a possibility that we could see those organizations conduct a strike at an Israeli embassy somewhere else in the world to target Israeli officials. I think we're really looking at a range of different options, including other groups like the Houthis in Yemen conducting attacks against commercial ships or U.S. ships in the Red Sea or the Gulf of Aden. So this has some broader regional implications.
Yeah, that's a wide range of options, which means a wide range of things for Israel and allies to prepare for. We know that the United States is sort of beefing up security in the region. What is the U.S. positioning if Iran retaliates?
Well, I think it's highly likely Iran and Hezbollah are going to retaliate. I think the U.S. objective is to keep this from escalating to a full-scale war that pulls in the U.S. So some limited strikes. We've seen a lot of that over the last several months, certainly since October 7th in Israel. But I think what the U.S. does not want is what we saw in October or in 2006, full-scale war between Hezbollah and Israel that brings in other countries into the region and could suck the U.S. in. I think that's the goal, is to prevent that kind of an escalation.
Mm-hmm. And then if there is a wider conflict, does it leave the U.S. with little choice but to get involved?
Well, I think the question is how the U.S. gets involved. I mean, the U.S. certainly will provide Israel with intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, air defense capabilities. We saw with the Iranian strike several weeks ago against Israel, the U.S. used F-18s to conduct strikes against Iranian drones en route from Iran to Israel. So those are all defensive intelligence surveillance measures protecting commercial vessels in the Gulf of Aden and the Red Sea. I think the question is, to what degree does the U.S. get involved in offensive operations in Lebanon or that kind of activity? So I think defensive, definitely. Offensive, we'll see.
So now we are possibly looking at sort of another conflict. But in the meantime, in the backdrop, there have been ongoing on and off negotiations between Hamas and Israel for either ceasefire or hostage release or something. I imagine it is difficult to negotiate, though, when most of Hamas's leadership is dead. And they need new leadership. Whoever's sitting at that table negotiating perhaps is not around right now. I mean, what's your take on these ceasefire negotiations? Are they basically on less than life support?
Yeah, I think they're in real serious trouble. The reality is that the Israelis just killed the senior Hamas negotiator for the ceasefire discussions in Iran. And who did Hamas replace him with? With Sinwar, who's in Gaza right now, generally hiding, almost certainly underground. So I think the likelihood of any kind of a ceasefire with the possibility of some escalation of the conflict is in real dire trouble right now, which is unfortunate because we need a diplomatic solution. I just don't see it in the short term.
Right. Seth Jones, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.